Welcome to Megapath Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today let's talk about The Girl with All the Gifts, the newest zombie movie that has zombie lovers going crazy. I've received a lot of messages from you guys saying I gotta watch this movie, and I have to say, I remember watching the trailer a few months back, and I thought the same thing. I was like, I'm definitely watching this. This looks like a good movie. It actually sounds a lot like The Last of Us. It appears they used the same documentary to base the fungal infection, the zombie virus, the same way. There's differences, sure, but there's a lot of similarities, and especially since this revolves around a little girl potentially having the cure, the same way The Last of Us revolved around it. But the stories, though, outside of that fact, they're very different, extremely different. You get different feelings and all that, but it feels like it could possibly take place in the same world. A less crazed world, because the zombies just visually, they look a little more laid back. They just look like extras with mud on their faces. That's probably one of my biggest gripes visually with the movie. I want to talk about this in two different parts in one video, and there's a specific reason for that. The reason is because I think this is, or I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen The Girl with All the Gifts. I would highly recommend it, and I would even highly recommend reading the book. I even might end up reading the book. It was a short story in 2012, and then they made it a book. The guy who wrote the short story wrote the book and the screenplay at the same time, and then the movie's coming out now. The book came out in 2014. I believe those are, that's how it happened. I could be wrong on some things or whatever. And for those interested, The Last of Us went into production in 2009. They started showing some images in 2011 and making announcements and stuff like that. So it seems real difficult for one to copy the other. It's a lot more believable that they just simply watched the same documentary. I watched the same documentary, and I'll show you images where you can use the documentary, create your own zombie story, and not ever know about The Girl with All the Gifts or The Last of Us, and you could come up with the same shit, you know? The only main difference or similarity that's questionable is having the girl be the cure, you know what I mean? Which, again, I think this is just coincidence at this point, unless we see any evidence. But I think it's just fans coming up with crazy theories that one's copying the other. Whether or not you love one over the other, I think it's just shit coincidence, you know? That being said, the specific reason why I'm covering both is because both discussions in this one review is because even though I highly recommend it, I got so many messages I found this to be overrated compared to all the people saying that this is the best zombie movie they've ever seen. For me, it was just overrated based on the outpouring of, dude, you gotta see this. If somebody said, Ronnie, I only have 3 hours to live, do I watch Train to Busan or The Girl with All the Gifts? I wouldn't even let them finish that sentence, and I would say Train to Busan, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. I love the world a little more in The Girl with All the Gifts because of that post-apocalyptic atmosphere. It has what I call beautiful abandonment or some shit like that. I don't know why I said I call it. I just made up some shit, but it's like this beautiful landscape that's been abandoned and nature's taken it over, you know? In my opinion, I would have paintings all around my office if I knew where the hell to buy them, of images like that. And I know that might seem messed up. Maybe that does. Maybe that's not messed up. But I think landscapes like that, it's just gorgeous. Just gorgeous. I love it. I love it better than, you know, I don't know, images of nature itself. Just nature, you know? I love the nature overtaking what man has created. I think it's so beautiful. But for those of you who have not seen The Girl with All the Gifts, I highly encourage you to go watch it without hearing anything else. For those of you who want to, and come back and listen to the spoiler discussion though, because I want to hear what you have to say. But for those who want to know at least a little bit of what you're getting into, I do think the trailer, because there's not a lot of reveals in The Girl with All the Gifts. It's not about that. But I do think the trailer gives away too much. And there might not be the right way to give enough information to convince you to watch it without giving you too much information, and that could be seen as a flaw in the writing, you know? Because I was always waiting for a bigger reveal to happen, a bigger event to happen, and it didn't. It went a different direction that seemed like it should have been a side story and not the main story. But A Girl with All the Gifts is just about a group of survivors trying to take a little girl who could be the cure, That is probably loud in the microphone. Yeah, I'm sorry. I won't do that anymore. I'll put it down. They're trying to take this girl who could be the cure to a safe location. The girl in it, the reason why she could be the cure is because she's half zombie and half person. Now you find that out, half human being. You find that out in the trailer, and you also find it out very early on. Knowing this is a zombie movie, going into this, in the first 5 minutes, you'll piece that together because there's enough hints right away. So that's not a huge spoiler. That's something you learn within the first 10 to 15 minutes. She's a zombie. She has to eat. She'll turn you if she bites you. She'll turn you into a zombie. But she's not rotting. She's alive. You know what I mean? She's not dead. So it's that kind of mix where she needs to feed. She has fungus on the brain. She'll turn you if she bites you, but she's also a living person. She's growing. She does grow. She doesn't deteriorate, if you get what I mean. Now, I will say the landscape, the atmosphere, I loved it. I wish we could have got more of it. I feel like there's a point in the movie where they find a shelter. Let's just call it a shelter to keep it simple. And the movie feels like it detours from something more interesting to, okay, let's finish the story. You know what I mean? The sound, I will say, is probably one of my favorite aspects of it. I think the soundtrack makes even the most regular, normal, chill scenes 10 times more entertaining just with the sound alone. I loved it. The acting was, there was nothing that stood out as absolutely horrible. Something stood out as fantastic, though. The little girl playing Melanie, she stole the show. She was an absolute delight. She made, especially one moment that is just downright borderline stupidity, and I just can't believe it even made it into the movie. It should have been left out. Maybe it sounds good in book form, but for a movie, it just turned completely ridiculous. It was as if it was something from the 70s, from the 80s or 90s, something you would find in a movie from the 80s or 90s, but it didn't work, I felt, on a movie, maybe in a book. But she even made that ridiculously stupid moment bearable to watch. Now, the story is simple. I've seen a lot of people not like this, and then some people said, oh, you just didn't understand the story, whoop-de-whoop. And I think that's bullshit. I have to say right now, the story is not subtle. The meaning of the story, it's not. I mean, they beat you in the face with a hammer. It's in the dialogue. It's in the scenes. It's happening. There's no way. The only way you're going to get confused, because there was a moment there where I was overthinking it, and I was like, oh, I see. It is what was on the surface. The only way, if you're not understanding the theme of it and what's going on, you're just thinking too hard. You're thinking it's something more profound than it really is. Rewatch it again. Just look for the simplicity of it. You'll figure out what it's about. And I think that is another weak moment. One last thing, the zombies, probably my biggest gripe, even though they acted terrifying, they looked terrifying, seemed terrifying, look, as far as their movements, you know, visually, they were absolutely disappointing. And I know what they were going for, because you can see the mold and the clumps from the documentary. You can kind of see that direction they were going, but they still didn't want them to be rotted away and decayed, because apparently this is supposed to be a few years into the apocalypse and stuff. So I kind of understand their decision, but that being the case, now that I think about it, even though it's a few years into the apocalypse, man, they should have been a lot more rotted away than that. A lot more scary, a lot more realistic. A lot of them, when they got to the zombie moments, even though they were good and I enjoyed it, it still felt like, because of how it looked, it felt like something I could do with a couple people I rounded up from the neighborhood. Let's slap mud on our faces, and then you pretend to attack me. You're a vicious zombie. Come get me. You know what I mean? I highly recommend it. Don't get your hopes up. Don't put a super high expectation on it, and you should probably enjoy it. I will say, even though I probably shat on it a little bit, I think this as a zombie genre movie definitely belongs on the Blu-ray shelf. It definitely belongs in the must-watch, the must-view. It's there, just because it didn't live up to the expectations that were given to me by so many people coming to me saying this was the best thing they've ever seen. I think I am more likely to put in Train to Busan, or even The Crazies, which isn't technically, it's not a classic zombie movie, or technically it's not a standard. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not a standard zombie movie, The only one I really flip my shit over is I Am Legend. If anyone tries to say I Am Legend is a zombie movie, I will hunt you down. I will stop this recording. I will hunt you down. Breathe, Ronnie. I Am Legend is a vampire movie. They burn in the sun. They're smart. They set traps. I read the book, and it's clearly a vampire. You know what I mean? Even though in the book they still stay away from putting a label on it. At least the book I read. But they're vampires. Don't feed me that they're whatever. Just whatever. Now, we're going to go into a spoiler discussion just a moment so I can justify why I wasn't blown away with this movie for those of you who have seen it. And then maybe you can leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment box. Maybe we'll revisit it and then we'll come up with an explained video for The Girl with All the Gifts. In case you guys are interested in that, you'll have to let me know. That's your job. Let me know down below if you want the conversation to continue or not. So those of you who haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back and let's chit-chat a few more minutes. So spoiler warning over. We're diving right into some spoilers. First thing I want to talk about before I forget, I'm going to put this image on the screen of the ant. All right? If you look at the images of the cordyceps fungus, you'll notice that out of the ant grows this like root. It's usually like white or like a lighter color root, and then there's this ball, and I think the idea is that the spores get in the air and it infects the other ants, and this is something real. This is a real thing. The documentary is incredible. The only reason I wouldn't steal some of this stuff, or not steal, but use some of these facts and use some of this stuff for my own Doomsday Kingdom project is because of The Last of Us. I want The Last of Us to be, you have that. I love it. I love what they did with the zombies. Give us that material. I'll find something else, but if you go watch the documentary, it is incredible. I love it. I think I'm so jealous. The clickers and the idea with The Last of Us. But even without creating cool monsters for our video game, just this idea of this type of virus alone, it's so damn cool. But if you look at the ant, that little pod, it looks a lot like the pod that you see in the movie. So that's where you see them drawing inspiration from this real thing that affects these ants. And I think it's so cool. It's so interesting, that aspect of it. I love it. Having that play like a major part in the ending, though, fell a little short for me. It left me wondering a lot, especially at the end where they just went right to teaching class. And I like how it came full circle with the kids are the ones being imprisoned in the beginning. They are in class and they're being taken away. They're prisoners in a classroom, so to speak. And then by the end of the film, and it's the humans that are on top. That's debatable because of what's happening outside. But you get the point of it coming full circle with them in that situation. And then at the end of the movie, them being, and this is a little bit like I Am Legend, because I Am Legend, the vampire movie, it's about vampires taking over the world. And I Am Legend, spoiler warning, they're legend because, skip the next 10 seconds, skip the next 20 seconds, right now, pause it. Okay, go. I Am Legend is a legend because he's the last human alive. Everyone's going to be vampires. They're going to take care of him, take him out of the equation, and the vampires will rule the world. Okay, come back. Unmute it. So, same idea here. You have the undead are now ruling the world. It's their turn to live. And you have the woman who's locked in the truck with no food or supplies or anything else, starving to death. No, I'm just kidding. But I did think of that for a moment. I'm like, wait a minute, she's locked up in that shit? Is it the next day? Because the girl's all like bloody and whatever. But I like how she went, Melanie at least went and gathered some of the other kids from the hospital, or the orange kid, the orange hospital suits, unless I read that wrong or saw that wrong, but the atmosphere, good. I would have liked more of out in that world. I think it would have benefited the story more if you're going to have it simply be about this struggle between the two different new species now, the old-fashioned human and then the hybrid zombie human. I think the story would have benefited more having them survive out there, add an extra half an hour to this and add some survival, add a little more exploration, add a little more of this world that's fallen down, maybe even meet a band of survivors. They don't even have to be the big bads. They could be a band of survivors. Introduce us to another aspect of something that's happening in this world, you know? It felt a little flat in that aspect, as if we should have seen more. The world, the atmosphere should have opened up a little bit more. Then again, maybe they didn't have the budget for it, or it just didn't fit with what they were going for. Now with the sound, I don't know what else I can say. I loved it. I loved it. I'd have to go back and rewatch, pick out certain moments. I don't remember any moments where it drew me out. I remember moments where the sound was a little overpowering. The soundtrack was, and maybe they should have toned that down a bit. But for the most part, I enjoyed it more than I was annoyed by it. The acting, again, Melanie, I want to make a point of stressing that again. I think she did a fantastic job. But to clarify, the part that I thought borderline stupidity was when we reached the children. The children, oh, the children. When we hit that moment, I was like, don't jump the shark. Don't do it. Don't jump the zombie. Don't do it. And they did the shit out of it. They did it without a courtesy spit. They didn't even care. When we got introduced to this group of children out there and Melanie was spying on them and they picked up that guy's scent and they started going for him, I was like, oh, maybe they can make the kids scary and terrifying. And they started out good when the little creature brought the rat, and it's like, you know, come on, come on, come on. I was like, all right. At first, it made it look like you set a trap with food. That was clever. I like that. But now you're holding this rat. Like, okay, come and eat it. Why didn't you just hold out a can of food or something? Maybe the kids aren't that smart. All right, I'll buy into it. But it seemed like they were that smart in the beginning, because, or was that a coincidence? He followed cans in there. That seemed like the trap. The rat part just seemed like they did something smart and then they were dumb again. So that seemed to contradict itself. But then once they surrounded the guy, I was like, okay, this could end up very terrifying and scary. It fell short a little bit. The guy was going to pull the grenade, and I really felt like he should have pulled the grenade. It seemed a little silly and stupid for him not to. If he's going to go out, if I'm going to go out, I'm not going to let a band of children eat the shit out of me, eat me alive, and all. That's painful as hell. Just that's one of the aspects I thought was terrifying as a kid about zombies, is because they eat you alive. It's slow and it's painful as shit, you know what I mean? And that's why I dislike some of these zombie movies where they turn real quick. They turn quick in this, and I know the idea here is to make it suspenseful. Oh, you're bit, oh, you turn, it's quick, you know? But I feel like that takes away from the person getting devoured slowly, because that's why it's so terrifying, because you're being eaten alive. The pressure, the pinching, the tearing, the ripping, just, oh man, all over, especially in sore spots like your ribs and your back, and damn, that's some scary shit. So he doesn't pull the pin on the grenade, and it felt like that's something the character would have done. It felt like they didn't do it because they didn't have it in the budget, or maybe they couldn't make it work. Maybe they couldn't make that effect work. Maybe they thought it was better showing his body eaten apart, and they didn't want to blow up half the kids, yada, yada, yada. So that part I really disliked. And then when they revealed he was all eaten, I said, okay, this is going in a good direction. They're starting to make these kids terrifying. And then they brought the scene where Melanie is challenging the leader. I don't know if they played that out as instinctive. They never set up anything where the kids were learning stuff in school about animals in the animal world, the animal kingdom, because they do teach that in school sometimes. They do teach different things with animals protecting their young and showing strength and the leader of the pack and that sort of thing. So they never really set it up. Okay, it's believable, but it just sounded ridiculous. She's doing all this grunting and she fights the kid. I think they should have showed it. I think pulling back from the brutality in the moment where she beats the kid to death was a bad call. I think it's one of those moments where this is something brutal that Melanie is doing. You need to see it. You know, it needs to resonate with you, or it's like it doesn't happen, you know. And that's one thing that I criticize a lot with horror movies or action movies or anything that has somebody like a child or a woman, or I should say a weak woman or a weak character, a weak guy even. It doesn't matter. If you have that certain specific character and you show like an innocent character, a nice character, and you show the killing, the brutal, vicious killing off screen so you can shelter the audience from the brutality of a child getting his head beaten in. You just shit on your own story. You just shit in your mouth at your own story because that's all ridiculous. You need to see the brutality because then we can match that brutality with that character. When you do it off screen, and I know this sounds ridiculous saying it, but it's almost as if it's not as brutal. You know, we didn't really see it, but if you showed that kid's head being caved in, now we're going to look at Melanie different. And that's my biggest, that's the biggest complaint of why I hate that they do that type of blocking where they don't show the brutality, because you look at the characters different. It resonates with you different. It opens up a greater discussion. With Melanie, it's easier to write it off as, oh, little girl did whatever, it will do. She just beat him and he died. No, show his head getting caved in, you know what I mean? Even though it's a kid. Now, there was a point where she yelled out to her people, oh, pretend like you're afraid of me. And I like how Park said, pretend, like he's scared of her, you know? But after that, she yells at the kids, these are mine, they're mine. And I know that might have been more for the audience, but that's another part of my complaint. A lot of the good moments here, there was a lot of spoon feeding going on. There's a lot of, well, our audience might not be smart enough to understand this, so let's just tweak it a bit so that way they definitely understand it. That stuff I don't like. It's like a hammer in the face trying to call it subtle. And I know that's a harsh criticism because it's not that obvious, but I think in 2017, this is very different than 2007. It's very different than 1997. It's very extremely different than 1987. Back in the day, you didn't even have special features. You know what I mean? So if you needed to spoon feed the audience, yeah, you know, we let it slide a little bit, you know what I mean? Nowadays, you have people like my dumbass on the internet talking about the movies. You have deep analysis, you have Blu-rays with special features, you have the filmmakers and the commentaries. You got all this stuff going on. You don't need to spoon feed shit to the audience. You need to spoon feed as little as possible. And I know that a lot of filmmakers can probably say, well, that's not true, because when we don't spoon feed the audience is like, I don't get it, I'm dumb. But a lot of those movies are ridiculous shit. And it's like, if you're going to make really complicated or the mindfuck stories, if you're going to do something like that, yeah, you might want to leave some explanation in there. But for a simple zombie movie like this, you don't need to spoon feed it at all. That being said, the ending, I didn't find it powerful at all. Again, it felt like it was a B story that should have had something else that was a little more explosive. There should have been a little more tension. I truly feel like the story just fell apart completely. Now, that being said, I want to make this very, very clear. If you go into this watching it as a zombie movie, especially compared to all the shit we get in the zombie genre, this is a good watch. It's enjoyable. It's even enjoyable to rewatch. And maybe every 3 or 4 years when you put in your favorite zombie movies or your favorite zombie movie Blu-ray shelf, this will be a nice mix, a nice variety to say, well, I watched The Crazies 100 times. Maybe I should watch something else. The Girl with All the Gifts. Yeah, that's a refreshing change. Put that in. So it's good for that. It should always stay. This movie should definitely stay in your best of the zombie genre Blu-ray shelf. However, if we get a consistent flow of fantastic zombie movies, The Girl with All the Gifts will slowly drop to the bottom of the list. It's just not strong enough to hold up, in my opinion. But compared to what we have now, it should be in the top 20 easily. If you guys want to tell me your top 20 zombie movies, and we got a list coming up I'm working on that's part of one of the longer videos I want to do. I Am Legend will be nowhere near that list at all. And if any of you recommend I Am Legend, I'm going to hunt you down. I will hunt you down. I'm not kidding though. Thank you very much for suggesting this movie. I think if it wasn't for the hype train, which isn't your guys' fault. Like, I got hyped about Train to Busan. I'm not going to apologize for being excited about that and falling in love with that movie. Not at all. So don't anyone feel shitty because you loved it. If you love this movie, that is fine. I love Looper, and some people say it's ridiculous, especially the time travel shit. But I gotta tell you, I enjoyed that. It's one of my guilty pleasures. I enjoy the shit out of it. You know what I mean? I don't care if people say it's dumb, especially not making sense with time travel. If you enjoy the movies, man, there's a lot of guilty pleasure movies I have. But if you enjoyed it, that's fine. Absolutely fine. I'm here to give you my opinion. You give me your opinion down in the comment box, and then we'll share notes later on, maybe in a different analysis video. I don't know. I don't want to stop talking. I want to chit chat more. So if you guys want to leave some suggestions on other zombie content, I'll even rewatch The Horde. I remember I think it's a French movie I watched years ago. It had to have been over 5 years. And I remember liking that a lot, so I'm going to try to find that again. Remember, you can watch the Girl with All the Gifts on Amazon. It was $6. It's worth the $6 rental. Go check that out, because if you rent it today and you don't have time to watch it for a week, you still have it. I think you got like 30 days. Once you hit play, you only have 48 hours to watch it. So you can watch it on Amazon. I'm going to try to find a way to watch The Horde, and we're going to do more discussion videos on different zombie movies, and hopefully we can build a little community here of fans that are just strictly fans of the horror genre, the zombie genre, and we can have these long, like, I don't care how long the thing is, we can have these long discussions about our favorite zombie movies, and screw trying to make it some epic, because I'm always trying to do that. Back in my mind, I'm always trying to make, no, let's make these some epic, let's get images and videos, and we will do videos like that, but when it comes to the let's talk about our favorite zombie movies, let's just talk about the damn thing. So, you guys leave some suggestions down below. I'm going to do my best to try to watch The Horde. I don't know if that's even out to rent or what, so I'm going to look into that. Leave suggestions down below, and leave a whole list of 20 suggestions. Try to test your brain power to see if you can come up with 20 zombie movies, 20 good zombie movies. We'll watch them, and then we'll come back and discuss it. Maybe next week we'll discuss one more, and then we'll do that. Every week we'll discuss one. And we got live videos coming too, so I'm working on that. In another week or two, we'll be doing the live discussion videos. Thoughts and opinions in the comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn.
Subscribe now.